happened in less than a minute. But what Ranger did rewrote everything I thought I knew. I wasn't even through security when he stopped, ears sharp, body tense, then dragged me away from the check-in line like something unseen had crossed our path. That moment uncovered a glitch in the system, not just in the airport, but in who the system thought I was. If stories about truth, identity, and the bond that can't be faked move you, hit like and subscribe. This isn't just a story about a girl and her dog. It's about what happens when the system picks the wrong person to erase. The morning rush at New Liberty International Airport was as chaotic as ever. Families pushed carts laden with luggage. Travelers zigzagged toward departure gates, and flight announcements echoed across the high ceilings like clockwork thunder. Among the crowd, 12-year-old Clara Jennings tightened her grip on the worn leash of Ranger, her retired police canine. The German Shepherd moved with quiet alertness, his ears perked, his amber eyes scanning the perimeter of the check-in line. Clara stood with her grandmother, Evelyn, who kept checking the boarding pass with her reading glasses perched halfway down her nose. "Flight 113 to Charlotte, we're early." "That's good," Evelyn mumbled, tucking the documents into her purse. Clara nodded but kept her eyes on Ranger. He had been acting strange all morning. Usually calm, Ranger had been pacing restlessly since they left the house. When they approached Terminal B, he growled lowly at the baggage carousel, and now, just outside the TSA screening checkpoint, he was twitching, tail stiff, weight shifting forward like a coiled spring. "Is he okay?" Evelyn asked, noticing the dog's tension. Clara gave a half shrug. "He's never like this here. He used to work this airport, remember? Retired or not, instincts don't retire," Evelyn said quietly, then sighed. "Just keep him close." The TSA line moved slowly, inching toward the conveyor belts and X-ray scanners. That's when Ranger froze. His ears locked forward. In a flash, he lunged to the left, pulling Clara with such force that she stumbled. He broke free from her grip and tore toward a man in a charcoal blazer, wheeling a sleek hardshell suitcase. "Ranger," Clara yelled, "heel." But Ranger didn't stop. The shepherd growled, teeth bared, and pounced on the man's luggage, clamping onto the bottom corner of the suitcase with a violent snap. The man jumped back, stumbling. "What the hell is wrong with your dog?" the man shouted, trying to yank the suitcase away. The crowd gasped, phones lifted, some people recording, others backing up. Two TSA agents rushed over, one with a hand on his belt. Get it out. Look it for the dog." Ranger didn't release. He gnawed at the bag with surgical precision, tearing open the seam along the side pocket. Clara rushed forward and grabbed his collar, but he wouldn't move. Finally, with a ripping sound, the fabric gave way and something small and black clattered onto the floor. Not a weapon, not drugs. A matte black device the size of a cigarette pack, with a blinking green light and tiny metal prongs along its base. One of the TSA agents crouched down and examined it. "This isn't standard tech," he muttered. "This looks like biometric." The man whose bag had been attacked turned pale. "That's not mine. I have no idea how that got in there." Ranger growled low and guttural and refused to back away. "You've seen that dog before," one of the older TSA officers said, stepping closer. "He used to work our bomb squad. That's Ranger, right? Unit 26. Clara nodded shakily. "He's retired. But he still reacts to danger." Just then, one of the staff radioed from the security room. "Checkpoint Bravo cameras just went offline 10 seconds ago. We've lost the feed on all scanner zones." The TSA supervisor's eyes narrowed. "All of them?" "Yes, sir." Entire corridors, the air changed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and a second team was dispatched to sweep the area. The man with the suitcase was quietly escorted away, his protests lost in the mounting tension. Evelyn pulled Clara aside and whispered, "That was no coincidence." Clara looked at Ranger, who was now sitting calmly beside the torn suitcase, eyes never leaving the direction the man had been led. 6 months ago," Clara said softly. "The cameras went out too, the day Dad disappeared." Evelyn's lips tightened. "You're not boarding that plane?" "What?" "We're staying." "Something's happening, Clara." An officer approached them. "Miss Jennings, your dog just flagged an unauthorized biometric collector. We'll need a statement." Clara followed without hesitation, her heart thumping against her ribs. Ranger moved at her side like a shadow. At that moment, She didn't realize this was the exact place her father had last been seen, nor that this morning, without knowing it, they had reopened the investigation that everyone thought was buried. After the biometric device incident, Clara and her grandmother were escorted to a quiet lounge room near terminal security, while Ranger lay at her feet, eyes still alert. A senior officer took her statement and reviewed the footage of the incident, muttering under his breath about the device and how it didn't belong to any registered airline tech. Clara tried to stay focused, but her thoughts kept drifting back to her father. The last known record of him was at this very terminal, Gate 47B. As Evelyn handed over her ID for rebooking their canceled flight, Clara stood in front of a self-check-in kiosk, scanning her passport again, partly to distract herself, and partly to verify their new itinerary. The screen blinked twice, processing, and then turned red. A loud beep followed. Error, this passenger has already boarded Flight 113 to Charlotte at 8:43 AU. Clara froze. Her boarding pass was still unused in her pocket. She checked the time, 11:17 AU. She hadn't even arrived at the airport until after 9. Her fingers trembled slightly as she re-scanned the passport. Same result. Already boarded. A TSA assistant noticed the red screen and approached. "Is something wrong, miss?" "I didn't board anything," Clara said. Voice tense, "It says I already flew." "That's not possible." The agent frowned and tapped into the terminal staff mode. "Let's see." Here it is." Jennings, Clara, seat 18C, confirmed, scanned at Gate 47B at 8:43, cleared by facial ID. He turned the screen slightly toward her, showing a still frame, the back of a girl walking through the boarding gate, her hoodie up, carrying a small backpack. "That's not me," Clara said quickly, then paused. The figure in the image wore a light denim jacket, black leggings, white sneakers, the same outfit she was wearing right now. "Can I see the footage again?" The agent hesitated. "You'll need supervisor approval for full surveillance review." But this was the frame captured by the scanner. Evelyn walked over, catching the edge of the conversation. "What's going on now?" "It says I already boarded a flight this morning," Clara said quietly. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "That's nonsense. You were with me the whole time." Clara glanced at Ranger, who was now sitting upright, sensing her stress. "Can we talk to someone in IT or security?" she asked. The agent gestured toward a help desk near the staff gate. "Try passenger resolution down that hall left of Gate 52. The room was sterile, white and blue with flickering fluorescent lights and the constant hum of air vents. A tall woman in a blazer met them with a polite but stiff expression. "You're the Jennings case?" she asked. Clara nodded. "There's a duplicate boarding record under your name. Possibly a glitch, it happens. Our system occasionally mislabels profiles when—" "There's footage," Clara interrupted. "Can I see the video from Gate 47B?" The woman, whose tag read Marcy, nodded and turned to the computer console. She pulled up the surveillance feed and scrolled back. Clara watched as streams of passengers moved through the boarding area that morning. At 8:42, the camera caught a girl approaching the gate, head down, hoodie up. At 8:43, she passed through the scanner. The image paused. "There," Marcy said. The system flagged her facial match as 92.8% consistent with the passport photo on file. Clara stared at the screen. The girl's face was turned just enough to avoid full clarity. But the profile, the curve of the jawline, the way the backpack strap was held, was unerringly familiar. "Zoom in," Evelyn said. Marcy complied. The image sharpened as much as resolution allowed. The girl's hair tucked behind her left ear, a detail Clara recognized instantly. She had done the same thing in the mirror this morning. "Is there sound?" "Only gate audio, no ambient," Marcy replied. She turned on the feed. A boarding agent called out, "Flight 113 now boarding Group C." Then, "Last call for Jennings, Clara." A beep followed. Then the gate closed. "So you're saying someone used my name, my ID, and my face to board?" Clara asked. Marcy tapped her keyboard again. "Either that, or the scanner misread a similar face. But given the match percentage, I'd say your profile has been cloned in the system." Clara swallowed hard. "Is that even possible?" "Not legally," Marcy said, then paused. "There have been recent alerts about identity spoofing. People using deepfake overlays or stolen biometric data to pass as someone else. That device from earlier, Clara whispered. What if it was collecting my data for that? Evelyn stiffened. This can't be a coincidence. Her father worked here, he went missing under strange circumstances. And now this? Marcy looked uneasy. You should talk to our internal risk unit. I'll set up a meeting. While they waited, Clara stepped outside the room to breathe. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady her pulse. Ranger pressed close, nuzzling her hand. What does this mean, Ranger? She whispered. Was someone pretending to be me? Or did they know I'd come today? Her mind swirled with theories. None made sense. She opened her phone and searched her boarding history. The same flight showed, marked as completed, but she had never left the ground. She clicked the digital boarding pass again. It still registered as scanned. She hadn't told anyone outside her family she was flying today. No one but her school, and they only had the return date for Monday. Her backpack suddenly felt heavier. She unzipped it and checked the contents. Everything was normal, but the small notebook inside had a page missing, a torn edge at the back. Clara never tore pages. Her writing was intact. The last entry was dated yesterday, in her own handwriting, though she didn't remember writing it. Flight at 8:43. Terminal B. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention. Her fingers tightened around the paper. She turned to Iblance, whose face had gone pale as she read over her shoulder. I didn't write this, Clara said, even as she heard her own voice tremble. Ranger let out a sharp bark. Marcy reappeared from the hallway, this time with a young man in a blue jacket and ID tag that read Internal Risk Unit, Guest Relations. He didn't smile. Miss Jennings, I understand there's been some confusion about your travel record. I'd like to take a closer look at your profile and walk you through our deeper system. There are discrepancies I'd like you to help clarify. Clara met his eyes. Like what? Let's just say your presence today triggered more than one alert. He motioned toward a back door with a green access badge. Please, this way. Clara looked at Ranger, then at Evelyn. Neither moved. The hallway beyond the restricted door was narrow, lined with beige panels and flickering lights that buzzed with the fatigue of years. Clara followed the man from the internal risk unit whose name badge read L. Weaver. His pace brisk but silent. Evelyn trailed behind, her jaw set tight, and Ranger padded close to Clara's side. Ears perked, tail low, always listening. They passed a series of unmarked doors and emergency exits, until they came to a corridor with no visible signage. Just a dull steel door with a faded keypad and a red access scanner. Weaver paused. This is where our system logs said the second alert came from. The first was at gate 47B. The second was here at corridor T3. What kind of alert? Clara asked. Weaver didn't. Instead, he scanned his badge and the door clicked open. Let's see if the system picked up anything unusual. Inside, the air was colder. The room was dimly lit and smelled faintly of paper and static. To Clara's surprise, it wasn't some futuristic control room. It looked more like storage. Old file cabinets stood against the walls, and dusty shelving units held labeled boxes, all marked Human Resources Archive. Why would biometric data trigger an alert here? Evelyn asked, her voice skeptical. Weaver moved to a corner desk, tapped a control panel, and flipped on an overhead bulb, because this section used to belong to a different division, a now defunct department called Enhanced Passenger Oversight. You could say it was a special unit. High security, very experimental. It was decommissioned after an internal investigation years ago. Clara's heart stopped for half a second. She stepped closer. My dad, he used to work in airport security. Could this be related? What was his name? Weaver asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Thomas Jennings. At that, Weaver paused. Hang on. He walked to one of the shelves, scanning the labels, then pulled down a slim, gray file box labeled EPO, Terminated Personnel. He flipped it open. Inside were several security badges, some faded ID photos, and a pile of deactivated access cards with magnetic strips. He sifted through them, then stopped. He held up a rectangular badge with a blue stripe and name printed in bold. Jeunesse EPO Division. Clara stepped forward and took the badge in her hands. It was old, slightly bent at the edges, but unmistakable. That's his. He used to clip it to his front pocket. Every day. Evelyn took a breath, slow and shaky. So he really was part of this enhanced oversight group. Weaver nodded grimly. That department was supposed to streamline passenger analytics. Things like risk prediction, facial behavior mapping, early flagging for potential threats. They claimed it would revolutionize airport safety. Then, 6 months ago, it all shut down. 6 months ago, Clara echoed. That's when my dad disappeared. I know, Weaver said. That was the same month this corridor got locked. There was an incident, something involving data corruption and an unauthorized access attempt through a biometric scanner in Terminal B. The investigation was internal, quiet. Most of the files were redacted. Jennings was reported missing, and EPO dissolved shortly after. Clara's grip tightened around the badge. Was he under investigation? Weaver shook his head. That part's unclear. Some said he triggered the shutdown, or said he tried to stop it. As he spoke, Ranger suddenly turned toward the hallway. The dog's body stiffened, tail pointing toward a side wall behind one of the cabinets. Clara noticed instantly. What is it, Ranger? The panel popped open to reveal a narrow crawlspace. Cold air poured out. What's back there? Clara asked. Maintenance, storage. Let's find out, Weaver said. He ducked in first, turning on a small flashlight clipped to his jacket. Clara and Ranger followed, with Evelyn reluctantly stepping into the dark behind them. The passage led to a smaller room, half-finished with exposed insulation and wiring. At the center stood a dusty metal locker. Clara walked straight to it and opened the door. Inside were only two things: a black binder with a faded security stamp and a gray lockbox. She pulled the binder free. The label read, EPO case lock. Clara opened the binder. Inside were printed pages of logs, timestamps, and codes. One line stood out. Subject ID match, minor dependent. Clara stared at the line, her voice barely audible. Why would my profile be flagged? I'm not even part of the system. I never registered anything except school and normal ID. Weaver flipped the next page. That's the thing. According to this, your pattern was embedded long before that. It's showing initial input data from 5 years ago, maybe earlier. That's impossible, Evelyn said firmly. She was 7. Unless someone used her profile as a test input, Weaver muttered. Maybe your father entered it as part of a simulation, but why would the system reactivate now? And why would it duplicate her identity at a boarding gate? Before anyone could answer, Ranger barked again, twice. Sharply. Clara turned. The dog was facing the crawlspace entrance, hackles rising, body tense. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Slow, steady. From the corridor they had just come from, Weaver held up a hand, signaling silence. The small group stood in stillness, ears straining. The footsteps stopped outside the room. Clara held her breath. Something about the rhythm of those steps felt too measured, too exact. Then, a soft metallic click, like the sound of a keycard being swiped. But no door opened, no voice followed. Only silence. Ranger's body remained tense. Clara placed one hand on his back, steadying herself, and locked eyes with Evelyn, whose face had turned a shade paler. Weaver pulled a phone from his jacket and began typing. He whispered without turning, "We need to backtrack. There's a staff tunnel that connects this wing to the internal logistics floor. We can't stay here." But Clara wasn't moving. She had spotted something. Inside the lockbox, still in the metal locker, was another card, smaller, labeled simply, written in pen, faint but legible. "If you find this, don't trust their data. Follow the physical trail. You'll know it when he leads you." As Weaver led them back through the dim crawlspace into the main corridor, the tension hadn't left the air. Clara kept her eyes on Ranger, who was still glancing over his shoulder, ears flicking at every sound. Evelyn gripped her wrist tightly, whispering, "We need to get out of this wing. Whatever this is, it's not over." Back at the terminal's central concourse, the noise of travelers and announcements returned in waves. Clara blinked under the change in light and atmosphere, but Ranger remained focused, steering her subtly toward the left. He tugged on the leash, not hard but with clear intention. She followed. They passed newsstands and restrooms, vending machines and tired parents slumped over luggage. Then they approached a small cafe tucked in the corner of Terminal D. Modest place with mismatched chairs and a counter that hadn't been updated in years. And standing behind the espresso machine, adjusting his apron, was an older man with a thin gray beard, deep creases around his eyes, and a quiet, steady demeanor. Ranger stopped. He let out a single low bark, short and familiar. The man looked up, eyes locking on the dog first, and for a moment his weathered face softened with something like recognition. "Ranger," he said, stepping out from behind the counter. "Ranger, is that really you?" Ranger wagged his tail once, something he hadn't done all day, and stepped forward. "I'll be damned," the man muttered, dropping to one knee and placing a hand gently on the shepherd's shoulder. "I never thought I'd see you again, not after everything." Clara approached slowly. "You know him?" The man looked up, his eyes scanning her face. "You must be Clara. How do you? You have his eyes," he said. "He worked with your father years ago. Name's Malik. Omar Malik. Airport Security Unit 3, back when your dad was head of data review for EPO. We were part of the same rotation." Evelyn's brow furrowed. "You knew Thomas?" "I did more than know him," Malik said, rising to his feet. "He trusted me, and he left something behind, but I didn't know it would be you finding it." Clara's hands tightened around Ranger's leash. "Do you know what happened to him?" Malik's expression darkened. He gestured toward a corner table. "We shouldn't talk out here. Sit. I'll bring you something warm." They obeyed, sliding into the creaky booth near the back. The window faced the tarmac, but the view was half-lecked by supply trucks and loading crates. Malik returned with 2 mugs of tea, sat down across from them, and lowered his voice. "Your father discovered something he wasn't supposed to," he began. "Something hidden inside the passenger classification system. On paper, it was just optimization, data compression, improved boarding speed, lower false flags. But underneath, there was manipulation." "Manipulation?" Clara asked. "They were altering profiles," Malik said. "Not just flagging risks. They were fabricating passenger identities, injecting fake travelers into the system. Ghost flyers, we called them. Digital passengers with no real counterpart. The scanners would clear them, the manifest would show them boarded, but they didn't exist." "Why?" Evelyn asked. "To move things," Malik replied, voice low. "To slip people or items through security without notice. A ghost passenger can carry ghost cargo, or worse, cover a real person's departure by replacing them in the logs. Your father realized it when he found 2 identical records for a single traveler. Same name, same face, same biometrics. But boarding 2 different flights within an hour." Clara's stomach turned. "Like what just happened to me?" Malik nodded slowly. "Exactly like that. He tried to escalate the finding, but his request was denied. That's when he stopped reporting internally, started building his own audit trail. He encrypted everything, logs, images, even voice memos. He told me he was close to finding the source. Then, one day, he didn't show up for his shift. His badge went dark, and the whole EPO wing got locked down." Clara felt the card in her pocket, the one they had found in the crawlspace. "We found his observer badge and a note. He said not to trust the data. He knew," Malik said. "He knew it would eventually point toward the wrong people. People with access." "You mean high up?" Evelyn asked. "Much higher than EPO," Malik replied. "This went through senior administration, maybe even Homeland. All they needed was enough digital fog to confuse any inquiry." "Why would they do that?" Clara asked. "What would they gain from ghost passengers?" "Leverage," Malik answered. "Imagine if you could make someone disappear, not by hiding them but by replacing their records, by writing them out of the system and writing someone else in their place. No questions, no trace. That's not just data manipulation, that's power." Clara's throat tightened. "That's what happened to my dad, or it's what he tried to stop," Malik said. "The last time I saw him, he handed me this." From his coat pocket, Malik pulled out a slim flash drive that told me to hold it until someone came asking questions about pattern interference. That someone would know, Ranger, that someone would be you. He slid it across the table. Clara stared at it for a second, then picked it up carefully. "What's on it?" "Encrypted logs. The ones the airport systems don't want you to see, hidden behind decoy access folders. You'll need a specific sequence to unlock it. Do you have it?" Malik shook his head. "No, but I know where your father left it." "Where?" Malik looked around, then lowered his voice to a whisper. Utility storage. There's a panel behind the west generator marked with yellow paint. He hid a backup drive there, inside a service box. That code will unlock the logs on the flash. Evelyn looked uneasy. Is it safe? Not exactly, Malik said. Security doesn't patrol that level anymore, but that doesn't mean it's abandoned. Clara stood, slipping the flash into her jacket. Can you show us? No, Malik said, regret in his voice. My clearance won't get me down there anymore, but yours might. Mine? You were flagged today. The system already believes you're inside it. That means if you move now, you'll blend with your own data trail, but if you wait... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Clara felt a weight pressed behind her ribs. Then someone might rewrite it. Malik nodded. You have to move before they do. Clara turned to Ranger. The dog was staring at the cafe window now, his body still, but his ears twitched once, twice. She followed his gaze to the concourse outside, where a security officer in a navy blazer had stopped in the middle of the crowd. His head tilted, as if listening to something through an earpiece. Then he turned and looked directly toward the cafe, toward the booth where they sat. Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched as she stepped out of the cafe, the flash drive pressed tight in her jacket pocket, her heart pounding in rhythm with her footsteps. Ranger moved ahead of her, his posture alert but measured, weaving through the foot traffic like a sentry on instinct. Evelyn kept pace beside her, her jaw clenched as they moved back toward Terminal C, following the flow of passengers until the crowd began to thin. Malik had stayed behind, saying it was better if they split up in case someone was already tracking Clara's location via the internal network. Before leaving, he had whispered one last thing to her. Don't search anything from your phone. Use a public terminal and start with his badge number. Now, standing at a self-service kiosk near the Lost and Found station, Clara plugged in her father's old badge ID, the code engraved on the back of the observer card they had recovered. The screen blinked for a long moment before flashing a red border. Access restricted, clearance level expired. Underneath, in smaller gray text, a single line read, View permitted user CJ_E Delta. Or, you're not mean, Evelyn asked, reading over Clara's shoulder. That's not me, Clara replied, though her voice carried no confidence. Or at least, not what I thought was me. She tried to dig deeper, clicking the View Permitted Logs button. The terminal requested biometric confirmation. Clara hesitated, then pressed her palm flat against the scanner. The machine hummed for a second, then accepted the match. The next screen pulled up a minimalist interface with a single directory. CJ_E Delta greater than behavioral tracking greater than replication logs. The word replication made her stomach turn. She opened the file. Within it were 3 subfolders, Mark 1, Mark 2, and ACK Trail. Only one was dated with today's timestamp. She selected ACK Trail. A single line appeared. Subject logged at 7:46, gate C12 item. Transferred to lost luggage, parcel 8823. Evelyn stepped back. Lost luggage? Something with my name on it got sent to storage this morning, Clara said. You need to check it. The Lost and Found Center was buried near the lower end of Terminal C, past the food court and under a flickering sign that read, Item Recovery. The clerk at the front desk looked up as they approached, squinting behind thick glasses. Help you folks? I'm looking for parcel 8823, Clara said. It's listed under the name CJ_E Delta. Should have arrived this morning. The man typed quickly, chewing on the end of his pen. Yep, got that one. Turned in by ground staff at 8:09. Said it was found near the base of a baggage cart out by gate C12. He stood and disappeared into the back room. Clara tapped her foot, glancing at Ranger, who remained perfectly still, gaze fixed on the hallway behind them. A minute later, the clerk returned, dragging a standard black school backpack with worn fabric and one frayed strap. This what you're looking for? Clara reached out, heart pounding. She recognized it instantly. It was her old backpack, the one she lost months ago and thought she'd left on the school bus. The small embroidered patch of a planet was still barely hanging on the front pocket. This is mine, she said aloud. I mean, it was. But I never brought it to the airport. Take a look inside, the clerk said, clearly intrigued now. Clara unzipped the main compartment slowly. On top was her denim jacket, folded neatly. Underneath, her old school ID card with the faded picture and cracked lamination. And beneath that, her personal notebook, leather-bound, corners dog-eared from youth. She opened it, flipping through the pages, her handwriting, her tone, her exact phrasing. But none of the entries made sense. The last 5 pages detailed things she had no memory of doing. Left home at 6:10, arrived Terminal C before sunrise. Watched Gate C12 light up on board. Avoid cameras. That's not you, Evelyn said gently, reading over her shoulder. But it looks exactly like you. It is me, Clara whispered. It's just not my life. She turned to the ID again. The name read, Clara Jennings. Same birthday, same school. But the ID number ended in a different sequence. Just 2 digits changed. This isn't a lost item, she said. It was planted. Or replicated. Ranger let out a low growl, his body shifting toward the open exit. Clara turned and noticed 2 maintenance workers walking by, both glancing too long in their direction. They weren't dressed quite right. Both wore brand new vests, clean boots, no name tags. Clara zipped the backpack and slung it over her shoulder. Let's go, she said, now. They left the lost and found and turned sharply into a side hallway leading to the staff elevators. Oliver walked ahead to press the call button while Clara crouched beside Ranger, opening a side zipper in the backpack. There was a flash drive inside. A second one, labeled _mirror set profile 92. Clara held it up to the light. There's a full data copy of me, she murmured. Someone's been using this, training it, making it move through the airport like I would. But why? Evelyn asked her. To replace me? Clara guessed. To shadow me? To make it look like I'm somewhere I'm not? I don't know yet. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. Clara tapped the panel for level B1. She turned to Evelyn and Ranger, her voice low. If they created a version of me, it means there's a system that can scan, store, and replay my actions. And if it's tied to Dad's project, then maybe his logs show how to stop it, or how to find who built it, Evelyn said. The elevator dinged, slowing its descent. Clara held the backpack close, her fingers brushing over the names stitched into the collar of the jacket inside. It was hers, all of it was, but she had no memory of ever wearing it to this place. As the doors slid open and the cool air of the underground maintenance level poured in, Ranger stepped forward first, sniffing the air, body tap. Clara stepped into the hallway behind him and immediately heard something metallic clatter behind the far corner wall. A slow echo, followed by footsteps, heavy, deliberate, getting closer. The hallway in the lower maintenance level stretched ahead in cold silence. Each step Clara took echoing against the bare concrete walls. The sound from earlier, the clatter, had stopped, but the sense of being followed lingered like static in her chest. Ranger walked beside her, posture taut, nose twitching as he sampled the air. Evelyn stayed close behind, gripping the handle of the elevator door until it closed completely, as if trying to seal off whatever might have been pursuing them. Clara, she said suddenly, voice low but firm. There's something I need to tell you. I didn't think it mattered before. I thought maybe it was just your father being paranoid. Clara stopped walking. What is it? Evelyn opened her purse slowly, reaching into a zipped inner pocket. From it, she pulled out a small gray USB drive with a faded red sticker wrapped around it. Clara stared. 3 days before your father disappeared, Evelyn said. He came by late, after your bedtime. He looked tired but focused. He said he couldn't explain that it wasn't safe yet. He asked me to keep this safe and not mention it to anyone, not even you, unless something strange happened at the airport. His words exactly were, if Clara sees something she shouldn't be seeing, give her this. Clara reached for the drive with trembling hands. Why didn't you say anything earlier? Because I didn't understand what he meant, Evelyn said softly. I thought maybe he was under stress, that he needed rest. But now I think he knew exactly what was coming. Clara pulled her tablet from her backpack and connected the USB. The device blinked once, then opened a single file labeled, Do Not Trust Visual Data. She tapped the file. A voice recording played, raw and unedited. Her father's voice, calm but urgent. Clara, if you're hearing this, then it means something's gone wrong, and it means you're old enough to start asking questions they don't want answered. Listen carefully. You're going to see things that look familiar. People who speak like you, dress like you, maybe even carry your name. But they're not you. And more importantly, they're not accidents. The system you're in, this airport, it was built on a premise of predictive safety. But that safety was never neutral. It's built to protect patterns. And patterns can be rewritten. Clara's hands shook slightly as she held the tablet closer. Her father continued, I found something inside the database, an entire subrotation data when anomalies are detected. At first, I thought it was a failsafe, something to prevent fraud. But then I saw it in action. Real people flagged as duplicates. Their profiles rewritten, their locations reassigned. Some were removed from flights altogether. Others disappeared. And the people behind it, they didn't want to correct the errors, they wanted to control who counted. Evelyn's face was pale. Ranger sat close to Clara's feet, unmoving, ears forward. The voice on the recording dropped to a whisper. If you've seen anything today, anything that repeats, that feels like it already happened, then don't believe the system. Don't follow the posted schedules. They'll guide you away from the truth. Find the logs, the original ones. They're stored locally in Level 2, under the service conduit. You'll need the pattern key embedded in your old ID photo. Use a UV scan. And Clara, don't trust what the scanners tell you. They've been trained to make the wrong person look like the right one. The recording ended with a harsh beep. Clara stared at the screen, then at Evelyn. He knew, she whispered. He knew they were building something that could replace people without anyone noticing. But why you? Evelyn asked. Why your profile? Why replicate your movements? Clara exhaled slowly, her mind racing through every piece of the puzzle. The duplicate at the boarding gate, the fake backpack, the modified ID. Because I'm the error they can't delete, she said. Because I was in the system before it was finalized. If I'm still around, it proves they've been overwriting people. She stood, pocketing the drive. If there's a copy of the system before it was corrupted, it'll show everything. They continued down the hallway toward the service conduit her father had mentioned, turning into a maintenance stairwell where dust coated the handrails and only one emergency light buzzed weakly overhead. Clara's thoughts spun as she descended. What did he mean by pattern key in my old ID photo? How can a picture unlock data? Could be a hidden code, Evelyn suggested. Your father used to test watermark encryption. Maybe it's embedded in the pixel layers. E-scan, Clara repeated. I'll need to run that once we find the drive. At the bottom of the stairwell was a steel door labeled Utility Level 2. Clara pushed it open and stepped into a wide underground corridor lined with power panels and large gray equipment boxes. Ranger sniffed along the base of the wall, then suddenly stopped at a section marked with a yellow triangle. Clara followed and saw the faded outline of a hatch. No keypad, just a small latch and a rusted hinge. She pried it open, and inside was a compartment just large enough to hold a clipboard. And resting on it, wrapped in a piece of plastic, was a second USB drive, black and unmarked. She pulled it free, heart pounding. This has to be it, she said. This is what Dad was talking about. She grabbed her tablet again and inserted the drive. A loading screen appeared, asking for passcode authentication. She paused, then pulled her school ID from the recovered backpack. Holding it under the tablet's front camera, she activated the UV filter from her Photo Tools app. The screen lit up. Hidden behind the printed image of her face were faint symbols. Alphanumeric characters curved into the pattern of her smile. Evelyn leaned closer. Clara typed it into the prompt. The system unlocked. A directory appeared. EPO logs greater than Project Ether greater than session rewrites. She opened the folder. Hundreds of entries flooded the screen. Names, faces, timecodes, most tagged with RESOF. It was a live pattern tracking her movement across terminals, even within the last 20 minutes. And next to it, a second pattern labeled CJ_E Delta, marked as mirrored insult. She scrolled down. A map loaded. 2 blinking markers lit up on opposite ends of the airport. One where she now stood, the other still moving. Clara stood frozen in front of the blinking map, watching the 2 data points pulse in perfect synchronicity. Hers stationary near the utility corridor, the other one moving through Terminal A. Her breath caught as she realized what it meant. The duplicate is in motion, she whispered. It's inside the terminal now. Evelyn leaned closer, voice quiet but urgent. We need to shut it down. Pull the data or get someone to expose it. Kara nodded, sliding both USB drives back into her jacket pocket, her fingers trembling slightly as she packed up the tablet. Just then, her airport-issued phone buzzed, a private notification from an unknown sender. It simply read, "Meet me, 3rd floor lounge C. Come alone, you'll want answers." He's the one Dad always mentioned in passing. Said he signed everything but never looked too close. Executive Carlson. Evelyn's eyes widened. The man sits on the board of international flight operations. Why would he talk to you now? Because I'm the glitch, Clara said, and he just realized I'm still in the system. With Evelyn's reluctant agreement, they made their way back up to the public levels, taking a discreet service stairwell instead of the elevators. Ranger remained at Clara's side the whole time, his gait quick, posture firm, eyes darting with every footstep that echoed behind them. They reached Lounge C, a secluded area near the upper end of Terminal D, filled mostly with traveling executives and airline staff on extended layovers. The lighting was low, the atmosphere quiet, a perfect place for conversations that were meant to stay private. Clara spotted him immediately, seated near the window, alone at a round table, sipping black coffee from a ceramic mug. He was older than she'd imagined, with sharp features, slicked back silver hair, and a navy suit that looked untouched by the dust of real work. When he saw her, he didn't wave or smile. He simply gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Miss Jennings," he said smoothly, "thank you for coming." Clara stayed standing. "You asked for me." Carlson's gaze flicked to Ranger, who had planted himself protectively beside her, a low rumble in his chest already audible. "You'll forgive me if I skip the pleasantries," he said, leaning back. "You're in possession of files that don't belong to you. Internal data, system logs, project records, classified material. I'd like to offer you a path forward, quietly." "What you mean," Clara replied, voice flat, "is you want me to stop asking questions. I'm saying your presence here, your activity within the system, it's creating redundancies. Dangerous ones. You've become a duplicate entry, Clara. You compromise the architecture." "I'm not a file," Clara said. "I'm a person." "Of course," Carlson replied, the barest hint of a smile playing at his lips. "But the system doesn't see people. It sees consistency, predictability. When your father began violating that, injecting unknown variables, creating unauthorized branches, it destabilized everything we built." "He didn't destabilize anything," Clara shot back. "He tried to stop you from using a system meant for safety to erase people, to replace them. And yet the system works," Carlson said calmly. "Airlines are safer, delays are fewer, threat detection is more efficient than ever. At what cost? A few anomalies like my dad?" "Your father was a brilliant technician," Carlson said, setting down his cup. "He was also sentimental. He refused to understand that sacrifice is part of progress." Clara felt rage spike in her throat, but she kept her face neutral. Inside her pocket, her fingers tapped the audio recorder on her tablet, activating it with a silent swipe. "And those anomalies you mentioned," she asked, "they're people too. How many profiles have you overwritten?" Carlson didn't blink. "I wouldn't know. I authorize systems. I don't read the raw lines anymore." "You signed them," Clara said, watching his expression. "You signed off on the same suppress reports connected to subject profile 10422J. My father. You signed the redundancy loop that flagged him as a ghost passenger. You knew what you were doing." For the first time, Carson's face twitched. Not fear, not guilt, just calculation. "What exactly do you think you're going to do with this information?" "Tell someone," Clara said. "Anyone who'll listen." "And what makes you think they'll believe you?" he asked. "You're already being overridden, Clara. The moment your pattern separated from your duplicate, the system logged you as deviant. You're an unverified identity now. You've got maybe 3 hours before airport operations flag you as a false profile." "Then I guess I'll have to move faster," she said, standing. "We're done here." Carlson reached into his jacket, but before his hand cleared the pocket, Ranger sprang to his feet, growling with enough force to turn heads across the lounge. "Careful," Clara said sharply. "This could have been simple." "Then maybe you shouldn't have made it dangerous." Clara turned and walked quickly toward the exit, heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. Evelyn met her halfway down the corridor, eyes searching. Did he admit it? Everything but the words. Clara said. But I've got it on audio. What did he want? Silence, Clara muttered. He said I'm a redundant entry, that the system already sees me as a threat to its balance. Is that true? Evelyn asked. Does it matter? Clara responded. If I'm already being erased, we need to go public now, before they pull the final trigger. She reached into her jacket, pulling out the tablet to review the recording. But just as she tapped play, the screen glitched, momentarily replaced by a flicker of mirrored text, inverted and blinking. Then the playback resumed. Her father's voice from the earlier file echoed again in her mind. They don't fix anomalies. They erase them. As the last echoes of Carlson's cold warning faded from her mind, Clara clutched the tablet tighter, reviewing the audio file again to confirm it had saved cleanly. Every word, every inflection, every trace of his calculated justification was intact. She turned to Evelyn, her voice low and steady. We have to move now. He wasn't bluffing about the system tagging me as a duplicate. If that spreads, it won't just be about hiding evidence. It'll be about erasing me completely. Evelyn nodded grimly. Where do we go? Before Clara could answer, Ranger moved. The dog took a sharp turn out of the corridor and started trotting toward the far edge of Terminal D, bypassing security zones with uncanny precision. Clara didn't hesitate. He knows something, she said. He always does. They followed him through winding maintenance passages and underused walkways until the terminal lights began to fade behind them. The corridor narrowed, colder now, the air tinged with the musty scent of closed spaces and old electricity. Ranger stopped briefly at a heavy metal door partially obscured by stacked cargo carts and unused signage. On its rusted surface was a faded stencil that read, Terminal F Maintenance Access Only, Decommissioned. Clara stepped forward and pushed against the door. It groaned open slowly. Inside was a stairwell lit only by emergency strips, leading down to a forgotten level. Ranger descended without pause. This place isn't on any map, Evelyn whispered. Why would he bring us here? Because it wasn't meant to be found, Clara replied, following close behind. At the bottom of the stairwell, a wide hallway opened into an abandoned passenger terminal. Everything about it looked frozen in time. Rows of empty chairs lined against cracked windows, broken monitors hanging from the ceiling, and dusty luggage carts parked in silence like ghosts of travel long since halted. Clara scanned the room, shivering. This place hasn't been touched in years. It's still got power, Evelyn said, nodding toward the flickering overhead lights. Ranger veered left, past a collapsed kiosk and stopped at a service hallway half blocked by a security rope. He sniffed the floor, turned, and let out a short bark. Clara ducked under the rope and followed him into the narrow hall. At the far end, a single steel door stood ajar, light pouring from its edges. Clara pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was nothing like the rest of the decaying terminal. It was clean, operational, still humming with active equipment. Screens lined the far wall showing rotating surveillance feeds from various parts of the airport. A large central console blinked with system logs, and on the desk beside it sat a folder labeled in block letters. She crossed the room quickly and opened the folder. Inside were dozens of printed screenshots, each showing a list of passengers labeled with flight numbers, departure times, and statuses. But as she scanned the pages, a disturbing pattern emerged. Many of the names were marked common flight yet had no arrival timestamp, no gate exit, no baggage retrieval, no customs check. One after another, the logs confirmed it. These passengers had supposedly flown but never left the airport. They're still here, Clara whispered. Or, they never existed in the first place. Evelyn leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. Why would a system log people that don't leave? Because someone needed the system to think they did, Clara said. Fake departures mean room for fake arrivals. It's the only way to loop in the duplicate identities without creating mismatches. She turned to the console, tapping the screen to activate the keyboard. It asked for a badge ID. Clara pulled her father's access card from her pocket and slid it along the reader. The screen blinked once. Granted. The console unlocked, revealing a deeper archive. User records greater than passenger analysis, greater than experimental flight routes. Clara opened the folder and immediately saw her father's digital signature on multiple logs. But one subfile drew her attention. Non-partisan. The list that appeared stretched across multiple screens. At the top were 6 names highlighted in red, each followed by a timestamp and a tag, cleared for boarding, not logged through exit. One of the names was hauntingly familiar. L. McAllister, age 8, gate 19A, cleared 11:47 a.m. Status open. Evelyn's breath caught. That's your neighbor's boy, remember? They said he vanished on a connecting flight last year, no trace. Clara clicked into the log. Surveillance screenshots loaded. The boy's face as he stepped onto the plane. But no footage afterward. No landing. Just static. She moved down the list. More names. More children. Mostly flagged as flying unaccompanied or on urgent reassignments. This isn't just about you, Evelyn said. This has been going on for years. Dad knew. Perhaps he could open another folder labeled replication. The screen filled with side-by-side images. Real passengers on one side, almost identical clones on the other. These are the duplicates, Clara whispered, all running under the same ID, at different terminals, on different days. She kept scrolling until a familiar name appeared. Clara, generate the maximum radiance. Despera's photo loaded beside a time-stamped still from 2 hours earlier. Another her, walking through gate 12 in real time. She's still moving, Clara murmured. She's active in the system. I'm not. Evelyn turned toward her. Then what are you now? Clara didn't answer. She tapped into one more folder at the bottom of the screen. EPO Secure Comlog. The most recent entry was from 6 months ago. A message from Thomas Jennings, marked private and unreviewed. The text read simply, if this log is opened, then the original pattern still exists. Protect it. Validate only against physical interaction. The system is no longer autonomous, it's self-preserving. Evelyn asked. It means it defends itself from deletion, Clara said. It chooses who stays, and it's decided my version is expendable. Ranger barked once, a sharp, echoing warning that drew both their eyes to the door. A shadow moved across the hall outside. Then another. Clara stepped back from the console, her mind racing, one hand sliding to her phone to begin uploading the data. But before she could press send, the lights in the room dimmed, then just enough to trigger the motion sensors. The lights inside the surveillance room flickered again, longer this time, and the temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. Clara gritted her teeth as she hit export all on the terminal interface, watching the progress bar creep forward while the sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly from the corridor. Ranger growled low and steady, positioning himself between Clara and the door, his frame rigid with instinctive defense. Evelyn backed into a corner, clutching the strap of her bag, eyes locked on the movement in the shadows just outside the frame of light. As the file transfer reached 87%, Clara's airport phone buzzed again. A single message from a scrambled ID. They're initiating a wipe at the data core. Carlson is on site. If you want to stop it, now is the only window. Level 3. Clara read it twice, adrenaline rising fast. She grabbed both USB drives and slid them into her inner pocket, unhooked the external backup still transferring, and stuffed the tablet into her bag. We need to go, now. But where? Evelyn asked. To catch him, Clara said. To stop him before he deletes everything. Are you sure it's not a trap? Clara looked at Ranger, whose stare hadn't broken from the door. If it is, we don't have a choice anymore. They slipped out into the corridor with quick, quiet steps. Clara leading, Ranger tight at her side. She avoided the main elevators, instead using the same stairwells and back halls her father's maps had once shown her late at night when he talked about how systems never worked in straight lines. They made it to Sector G, Level 3, a service floor nestled above the primary IT division. Unlike the abandoned terminals, this section buzzed with faint machine noise, active servers, filtered air, and humming lights that blinked with regulated rhythm. As they rounded a corner, a familiar figure emerged from a side utility hatch. Malik, Clara whispered, half in relief, but also with uncertainty. And he's down there right now. Room B7. High-level engineers with him. The biometric keypads were overridden. This isn't routine maintenance, they're preparing a deep cleanse. They're going to erase everything, Clara said. All the replication logs, the suppress files, probably my whole profile. And your father's investigation, Malik added. All of it will vanish like it never existed. Then we stop them, Clara said. But we need proof, live proof. I've got body cam access, Malik replied, tapping the side of his collar where a small lens had been embedded. Internal security doesn't know I'm still patched in. If we walk in now, I can get everything. Clara hesitated. We don't walk in through the front. Good girl, Malik smiled. Maintenance conduit leads directly above the server bank. Quiet drop. You up for it? Clara didn't answer. She just started moving. They entered through an overhead shaft that opened onto a steel catwalk just above the core processing room. Below them, glass walls separated the central terminal from 6 uniformed engineers, typing at synchronized workstations. At the head of the group stood Carlson, arms behind his back, barking instructions. Begin Level 2 erasure. Focus on behavioral deltas and unstable ID clusters. We'll initiate the system reshuffle after confirmation. Jennings' profile goes first. Clara inhaled sharply. That's me, she whispered. Malik adjusted his body cam angle, muttering, keep your voice low, let's catch the confirmation. Another engineer spoke up. Profile CJ_E Delta is still active in 2 branches. Want us to force termination on both? Not yet, Carlson replied. We need one to run out the trace. Let the anomaly expose its backup link. Then we clear it. Clara looked at Malik. They know I'm trying to send it. Malik nodded, whispering into his mic. Unit Delta, we've got visual and audio. Prepare for intercept in 90 seconds. Clara's pulse thundered. Are we too late? Malik shook his head. No. We're right on time. The next few minutes were a blur. From their perch above, Clara and Malik watched as internal security swept in, fast and precise. 3 plainclothes officers from the airport's audit division flanked the main door, stormed in with badges raised, and froze the operation mid-keystroke. This facility is under review, one officer barked. Step away from your terminals, hands visible at all times. Cal Sharp turned slowly, composed but seething. On whose authority? Mine, said a firm voice behind him. A woman stepped forward. Chief Inspector Daria Lorne, head of Internal Passenger Integrity. You have live audio recordings, system access trail logs, and replicated biometric mappings from unauthorized terminals. Mr. Carlson, you've been overseeing a fraudulent data manipulation protocol with direct harm to federal aviation security. You are hereby detained for investigation. This is a mistake, Carlson said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. These were containment operations. Containment, Lorne repeated. Is that what you call erasing people? They were unstable profiles, Carlson insisted. I was preserving the system. You were preserving your control, Clara whispered from above. Lorne glanced up. Get that girl down here. Now. Malik opened the access panel and helped Clara descend the narrow emergency ladder into the core room. Ranger followed closely behind, landing with a controlled leap that made 2 engineers flinch. You're Clara Jennings, Lorne said, stepping toward her. You're the anomaly they've been chasing. I'm the original, replied Clara. And I've got the data to prove it. She reached into her jacket, pulled the 2 USBs, and handed them to Lorne. One contains my father's logs. The other contains the replication models they were using to shadow passengers. Including minors. Including me. Lorne took them without a word and handed them to her tech officer. Verify, copy, secure, now. Clara turned to Carlson, whose eyes narrowed with something halfway between contempt and regret. You could have fixed it, she said. But you built a system that erased the wrong people. You don't understand what this was meant to be, he hissed. It wasn't meant to be real, Clara shot back. That's the problem. Ranger stood firm, gaze locked on the former executive as if waiting for the command to act. Malik touched Clara's shoulder gently. You did it, he said quietly. You brought it into the light. Lorne looked at the remaining engineers. Your access is revoked pending full audit. You will cooperate with federal authorities and provide full credentials to every line of code touched in the last 12 months. Do not attempt to leave the premises. As the officers began collecting equipment and escorting people out, Lorne turned to Clara again. There's more, isn't there? Clara nodded, pulling the tablet from her bag. There's a list of names. Passengers who never left the airport. They're still logged as completed flights, but they never got off. Then we find them, Lorne said, and we shut this down for good. But even as the room settled into its tense post-intervention silence, Clara felt something stir behind her, not in the air but in the system itself. A monitor near the corner flickered to life on its own. A new entry appeared. Clara turned to see the image load, a mirrored version of her face staring back from a different gate. The monitor in the corner of the server room dimmed back into darkness, the duplicate image of Clara vanishing as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only a lingering silence that seemed to stretch deeper than the steel walls around them. But by then, it no longer mattered. Within the hour, Carlson was escorted off airport grounds under official suspension, his security credentials revoked and all administrative access cut pending federal review. The arrest wasn't dramatic, no cuffs, no shouting, but the weight of it was heavier than any chains. The scandal had broken wide open. Claire's recording, combined with the live footage from Malik's body cam and the full data logs recovered from the abandoned surveillance wing, became the catalyst for one of the most extensive internal investigations in the airport's history. Internal audit, federal aviation oversight, and a cyber crimes division from the Department of Homeland Security launched a joint inquiry that stretched across terminals, subcontractors, and every server tied to passenger biometric tracking for the past 6 years. For Clara, the days that followed felt like stepping out of a storm she'd been trapped in without knowing she'd ever entered it. The system no longer flagged her name. Her identity had been manually verified, not just through paperwork but through physical confirmation, voice patterns and records from her school and home that proved, without algorithmic interference, that she had never boarded Flight 113, that she had never left the ground that day, and that she had been telling the truth all along. The status on her profile changed from duplicated under investigation to validated original entry. Her digital shadow, the CJ_E Delta instance, was formally terminated. The log that had once split her into 2 separate passengers was archived as evidence, now part of a criminal case file against multiple senior data officers. For weeks, news outlets hovered around the edges of the case, calling it a glitch that grew teeth. But inside the halls of New Liberty International, they called it something else, the Jennings incident. And it didn't stop with Clara. The deeper the investigators dug, the more anomalies they uncovered. Passengers marked as having boarded flights they never took. Children who vanished from manifests only to be flagged again in cities they had no connection to. Biometric IDs with slight but deliberate mismatches recycled over and over under new names. When the case hit its highest escalation level, a restricted file emerged from federal servers that stunned even the lead investigator. Thomas Jennings, once presumed missing, was located. Not in a detention center, not in a grave, but alive, placed under a deep witness protection program authorized at the highest level of federal clearance. A silent protective relocation. Clara received the news in the most unexpected way, through a phone call routed through secure channels. A voice she hadn't heard in 6 months spoke her name on the other end of the line, cracked with disbelief and joy. "Clara, is that really you?" Her knees gave out. Ranger pressed close against her leg, steadying her, as Evelyn took the phone and wept without words. A week later, under guarded but private conditions, father and daughter were reunited in a secured residential facility just outside of D.C., where Thomas Jennings had been living under an assumed identity since the day he refused to alter the final reports that exposed the replication fraud. "You told me if I didn't sign the quiet resolution, I'd compromise national confidence," he explained to Clara in a voice hoarse with grief. "So instead, they took me out of the equation entirely. But not forever. With the system exposed and public pressure mounting, protective orders were lifted. Thomas returned to New Liberty not in shame, but in clarity. Greeted not by colleagues, but by justice. Clara never let go of his hand the entire first day they were together again. Ranger sat between them the whole time, tail flicking gently, as if confirming, "This is the right version. This is the family that was never meant to be split." In recognition of his role, Ranger received an official commendation from the Department of Aviation Integrity. His service record, previously marked only as retired K-9 unit inactive, was updated to reflect his actions in the Jennings case. He was honored in a small but emotional ceremony inside Terminal C, where Clara stood beside him, a new badge on his harness reading, "Reporters called him the hero dog who broke a system designed to lie." But to Clara, he was something simpler. He was the one who never stopped knowing who she really was. After the case closed, the airport began a massive overhaul of its biometric and identification protocols, removing automated override systems, mandating third-party reviews, and decommissioning any remaining replication modules embedded in backup server. A full audit was initiated across all domestic terminals using the same software suite. Carlson, facing multiple counts of data falsification, endangerment, and obstruction, was formally indicted. His trial was scheduled for the fall, but for Clara, the verdict had already been written in the files her father left behind. They tried to use a mirror to rewrite people, she said in her official statement, but the problem with mirrors is they only work if no one's looking behind them. Life didn't go back to normal. It couldn't, but it moved forward. Clara returned to school. Her name no longer caused security flags. Her record was clean, and in her town, in her home, people saw her not as the girl who glitched the system, but as the girl who didn't let it define her. Ranger retired again, but this time with honors. His favorite place was still the backyard under the lemon tree, where he could nap and keep one eye on the gate. And sometimes, when the wind was right, Clara would sit beside him, a hand in his fur, and think of all the faces that had almost been forgotten, until one girl, one dog, and one family refused to be erased. If the story kept you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next one. What moment surprised you the most? And where are you watching from right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to know.